So it is the evening of September 10th, 2025, the eve of the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And I'm here with Nick Freerillian. And we had this conversation previously scheduled. And what's ironic is that the conversation that we had previously scheduled is perhaps no less fraught than the conversation we're about to have. And I said to Nick before this started, I said, I'm not really a masochist or in or into sadism. Um, but as we seem to be in the Kairos at this moment, and maybe things will just settle down and maybe things will go on as normal for a while, and that will be great and that will be fine. We don't know. And maybe the right thing to do is continue to grow in fellowship and communion and relationship with the people that we've met, both virtually and in person. And Nick is one of those people for me. And I think it's necessary and proper that we demonstrate things like proper relationship in public from time to time. I think it's probably a problem if the majority of it is in public. But I think from time to time it's right, especially in regard to the rest of the body that I care about. And as everything else seems to be fraying apart, it seems right and just to attempt to try to stitch together the few pieces that I can stitch together, and do that on an individual basis. Leave the 99, go after the one. Not that I'm going after you, Nick, but I do feel that
Yeah.
way. And anyway, so we're here tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Yes. Thank you.
So where do you want to
Thank you.
start?
Well, why don't where are you thinking?
I wrote down I wrote down a lot of stuff for our initial conversation, and then I wrote down a lot more stuff before tonight. And the key question that keeps popping into my mind is for either side, what would it mean to win? What does victory look like in our current circumstance? And I ask that kind of rhetorically, but that's the problem is I don't have a victory condition. Um, and I go back to someone like Sun Tzu, who is like, well, if you're equally matched, fight, or if you know how to win, win, you know.
Yeah.
But if not, then split and reevaluate. And I said to Chad that my main I have many temptations, but one of my temptations is I can be very calculating and Machiavellian. I can be very cold, ruthless, methodical when I need to be. And there have been times in my past where I've done that to people. Um, but at the same time, I watched this short conversation that Seabax and Jordan Hall had on
Yeah.
wise anger, and I just don't know what winning would look like. It seems like there's not a place to point um, anger
Yeah.
in any regard. Yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's the first thought that comes to mind is I think it's in The Underground Man by Dostoevsky where he or his character, the Underground Man, shares that um he's like he's commenting on, because the world like really did used to be a terrible place, like just in everyday life for a lot of people compared to but by modern standards of like the lives you and I live. Um, and so the at that time, a philosophy could be like, man, if people just had their needs met, we would have utopia. And it's insane that someone in the 19th century, Dostoevsky, was able to be like, no, no, I know human nature. We would rebel against having our needs met and create chaos just so we could have something to strive for, to live for. And I think about that with what you said. And also, I mean, I'll just put my cards on the table. Like, eventually, the corner is going to have its Rod Dreher, Elizabeth Oldfield conversation on a digital scale. On the policy level, I probably agree with Rod a lot. But, and I'm not saying I disagree with him here. In general, where I disagree or don't see the same way of the just do this good policy thing is, I think identity is already broken down. Um, I forgot who said it. Someone said at Midwest, where actually I think it was John Hears. I think that's his name. He said, when a society has a spiritual vacuum, it's going to get filled. And that's how he interpreted the Europe situation, which I thought was interesting. And I think there's something to that. Um, but to that point, it's like, okay, if I got the policies I wanted that I thought were healthy, and I do think they would be better, healthy but better for everyone. Um, then what? Because I don't know my neighbors. In fact, I think I think the progressive impulse to help the stranger is actually probably a compensation because we don't have neighbors anymore. And so it's like, well, at least I can help them. To give a positive spin on it. So to your point of what does winning look like, I just wonder if we are in. I'm not trying to get too over my. I'm not trying to get over the church's skis of their job, but humanity had a moment of that freedom that Dostoevsky described, and we had it all, not at all, but you know what I'm relative, and we thought, let's just sabotage this, let's muck it up, um, and so in light of that, I don't know what winning is. I mean, in many ways, winning is return to the 1980s, but the 80s brought us here, so I don't know. It's almost like I'm not sure, but it I wonder if it's a version of like what has to happen, but woe to those by whom it comes. Like, you know, like something has to take place to even know the answer to that because I don't think we do anymore. But that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I have gotten to know more of my neighbors actually. As you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, like, I know four people in my immediate neighborhood decently well. One of them really well, such that I would be comfortable just going over to his house if something happened and or leaving my child in his care if something happened. Like,
Yeah,
he's
it's great.
a 70, I think he's 78, and he's a Vietnam War vet. He was a professional diver for 20 years after the Vietnam War, like a commercial diver. He's got four toes on one foot because of a diving
Mhm.
incident. He's a character, man.
Nice.
Um, but he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a good point. I suspect maybe I had this initial idea, unrelated to the events of today. I had this
Yeah.
initial idea of outlining what I think to be the worst case scenario, or where I think it's headed and what I'm trying to avoid, what I want to avoid, and then kind of working backwards from there. And maybe I could do that. So let me go down to my notes. So people I don't see how this doesn't result in what's in just the start of political violence. If it continues, I don't see how this doesn't result in further clamoring for more top-down control. Whatever that top-down control is, whether it's more police, more security, um, arrests based on, threats made online, etc. Um, if it continues, that's more top-down control. And then the switch, as I see it, or the real danger zone is when real ID comes into the picture, or the necessity of real ID. And I see both sides right now kind of playing with that idea of real ID, meaning the right would want real ID in order to more effectively govern our borders, uh, know who's properly in the right place and who's not. And the left would use it for police of hate speech, and the right is increasingly, I think, more willing and more likely to use it for the policing of threats and what they would consider violent speech. So if both sides agree that real ID is the answer and build it in such a way that it's not easily fakeable, that kids who want to get an internet connection cannot just suddenly like crack it or, break through the way I used to do for a net zero ad box in 1999. Like it would have to be something that's legitimate, like you couldn't fake. And if the political muscle comes to bear that something like that occurs, a real ID, then the question is like, would that actually solve the problem of what you're talking about, which is the identity breaking down and people not being able to relate to one another in constructive ways? And then if it doesn't solve that, then what happens when either side gets the equivalent of the ring of power and says, "Hey, we have control over this real ID thing. We can use it in this way because it's really the internet tearing us apart. The problem is the open borders or barriers or lack of barriers on the internet. And if we can say somehow, like you only get access with the social credit system or whatever it might be, you only get access to this or that, and we're watching you. That's what I'm trying to avoid. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Because as I see it, the identity problem inevitably occurs if the principality that you're most focused on, if the principality that I most care about or you most care about is too big. If it's too big, there is going to be a 1 in 100 million scenario that unites our attention on the principality that's too big. But if the principality is small enough such that there are 10,000 individual jurisdictions, and one of those jurisdictions has a tragic event, but the other 9,999 are just like, yeah, we're woefully ignorant. We don't, we're unaware of this particular event. And like, it's not like all of us woke up yesterday and were lamenting the death of Kitty Genovese. Do you know who that is? The start of the Boondock Saints. They talk about Kitty Genovese. Send it to Chad. It's not like there's a dearth of tragic events or violent events or unjust events or politically violent events throughout human history. It's the matter that it captivates the totality of human attention toward a crucible, toward a deciding event right here, right now that says you must choose one or the other. Go. And you must focus on this, you must comment on this, you must think about this, your identity is now wrapped up in this versus something else. That's the crux of the problem. And so the question is that enforced through some digital means or some physical means? Meaning if there was a warring states period, would we have the will to say, nope, you're staying together. I am going to top down make sure that these states stay together or something like that. Um,
Like a 21st century American Civil War approach. Like, we're not going to let you go.
because there needs to be an actual desire or willingness to hold the thing together.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that desire or willingness is not as strong as it was 150 years ago. I think it's still pretty strong. I think the majority of Americans are still fairly patriotic. I think so. So I don't think we're there yet. I worry more that I worry more that because this is the truth. It's the digital and it's the what we pay attention to that is causing most of the divides. In terms of how we go about our day-to-day lives, it's not like I pull up in the McDonald's drive-through line and the person is like, "Who did you vote for in the last election?" before they serve me my Happy Meal. Thanks be to
Hmm.
God that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
So it's primarily a digital principality problem that's driving thoughts, feelings, emotions, sentiments in the physical world. And so that's why the real ID thing is such a threat because I think the powers that be are getting wiser about that and see it as a necessity to regulate. And I see that from both sides. And I'm not sure I have
Yeah.
a good way forward through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, just to possibly throw one more thing in here, are you familiar with how Jordan Hall has talked about Real ID?
Mark of the beast, or has he
No, I think
advocated for it?
not advocated for it, but as he lays out his three possible ways forward, and this was close to a year ago.
Hmm.
I forget the details, but he weaved Real ID in there as a way, um, as part of his "here's how it could go right" plan, and it had something to do with like some hyper version of what we're able to do in the TLC, where it actually allows for uh, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It allows for like
Accountability.
digital accountability and then digital like planning. Like we can
Mhm.
round up the gang and do something. Um, but I'll have to send you the link because I don't remember the details. I was just trying to throw in one non or how it could possibly not be Mark of the Beast, but um,
Because
yeah, I mean,
in order for it to work, you need to have some sort of enforcement mechanism that can detect threat. And the likelihood of that being decentralized enforcement, like, oh, you're particularly angry and depressed today. I'm going to notify your best friend to give you a call. Wouldn't that be nice?
yeah, right,
I don't, I, it's not going to happen.
right, yeah, right, yeah, no, yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, you view, but what would the alternative be if we're headed towards Real ID or something like it? What's a
Mhm.
what's a veer in the road we could take to not go down that path? Because the other thing that comes to mind about Real ID, and I don't know if um, this is good or bad, right? Because right now one of the conversations is you see for probably the first time in you see a more of a willingness to advocate for tribalism because people feel so atomized, so alone,
Mhm.
and you know, and there's so there because there is something to like the nature of our world that has broke atomized us so much that people are just like
Mhm.
maybe not even I want to go back, but tribalism, and you could sort of weave maybe if you didn't use the T word, the tribalist word there, just that there's no scale of human identity. Like I've
Mhm.
talked about this before too. It's either like individual to individual or giant 300 million person collective.
Yeah.
Like we really mess with the in between stuff. Grimm's point
Because
about who's on your city, who's your city councilors, like, or even your state rep. Anything in between there, we don't talk about. And so there's some weird, like, flattening, and then a tiny skinny thing, and then it's also flat at the top, and that's our two realities. But it's not a um, and so I mean, I guess you could, like, a subsidiary approach could also be like a tribalism light that's actually healthy.
yep.
And you see this even in America. I mean, like, um, the like there have been plenty of good immigrant communities in America, and even I've experienced it. Like, I had a girlfriend who was first generation American citizen. Her parents immigrated from the Ukraine. And anyway, I went to a wedding on the East Coast where they lived, and just the feel of community, that you just feel it. Like, it when you're, it wasn't just because I was at a wedding. Being a mostly, like, everyone who went to that Ukrainian church, like, they were a tribe.
Hmm.
So it can exist, but but their kids will not have that. Their kids will be like me. Um,
Yep.
so there's a couple thoughts there. But
Well,
you see how reality would almost, like, lock you into that individual, flattened, atomized
correct.
world.
Yep. So you've got your national principality, and even in the text chain that I'm on with my Catholic men's retreat group, that's a Catholic men in my part of New Orleans that we know each other decently well now because we've gone on at least two retreats with one another. Even in that, like I replied, my reply was pray for our country. So even I am exhibiting the symptoms of exactly what you describe, where it's the okay, I've got my local community, and but then it's the nation and what's in between. And that I think that instinct, what you said is that yeah, so we're trying to rediscover like, oh, I'm gonna join the Greek church or this church or whatever, and we're trying to rediscover that. Um, that has been TLC for me. That in
Mm-hmm.
between community level of principality. And in that, when I got off of social media post May of 2020, post George Floyd, COVID stuff, all that, I got off of social media completely because I was convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that, and that included Twitter, that included, didn't delete my Facebook account, but I basically just stopped using it. I was convinced beyond a reasonable doubt at that point that anything I said or did probably did more good than harm to like the public conversation as such. Or sorry, probably did more harm than good. That's what I meant to say. And for the majority of what I was receiving from other people I cared about, probably did more harm than good of my ability to love them and be a good Christian, for lack of a better word, yeah, towards those people. And so I discerned that it was better without it. And to be honest, I didn't have, aside from the people in my life that I still like called or texted, I didn't lose much by doing that. It didn't feel to me like a major sacrifice. In fact, I felt much better after doing it. But I do realize like in that action, that's really the start of the history of me looking for something in between, like that intermediate level of principality, was that
Yeah,
moment. Yeah,
just to add on to that, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but
sure.
aside from Twitter, where I am how I am in the TLC, um, I deleted all, even my old Twitter, all my social media as well, in like 2015 ish.
Mm,
And I had a bit of a different reason, but maybe from the same roots. Um, because I'm uh, fairly high in neuroticism. So, like, when I entered the MySpace world as a teenager, it was as a little insecure boy, it was like hell for me. Like, it really effed me up. Um, and then as things started to get more politically divisive, um, I started having it. I didn't share all my thoughts, But if I would have, it would have created a division that I didn't have. But the way they were viewing it, perceiving it, like people I knew, because I would even put little stuff. Like I'd post something that I thought was interesting, just to because I was aware of the division. I was trying to find things to bring. Like I was sharing like a David Brooks uh centrist, like don't love Trump, like let's try to get along piece. Like I tried to find the most middle of the road shit I could find. And even then I had people reach out like, hey,
You're not on our side. What are you doing?
yeah. And I would share with him like my uncle, who's a professor, like most one of the most liberal guys in my family. Be like, your intentions are good, but here's why you're wrong. That's all he's ever done is tell me why I'm wrong. Uh, but and then I would start to have perceptions of people of like that weren't good. And not like I thought they were bad, but I would see it was just it was through that neuroticism lens, it was causing so much internal damage. And I saw the internal damage it was causing in other people. And I was like, I don't want if there's someone I don't see for 10 years and I see them in 10 years, I want that interaction to be that interaction with them. I don't want it to be based on 10 years of seeing their posts because they're either going to be an ally or an enemy if they're playing a certain game.
Yes.
And so that's why I bounced. But lo and behold, here I am in the TLC, and in that same digital world I ran from has helped me to create relationships that are unlike anything I have. Uh, yeah, I don't know how to put words to it. It's like some weird the diaspora is able to find itself, or something like that. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Yeah.
echo exactly what you were saying. The same pattern happened to me, different timeline, but the exact same thing.
So when there's a drama or a blow up like in the TLC, I do care about it. I want to fix it. I want to make it better. I want to help it in some way, shape, or form. I want to stitch it back together. But it's a manageable size issue. And I think I think it goes back to Peterson saying like put yourself in perfect order before you try to change the world. But then if you build up from there and you say, okay, I put myself in as best order I know how to do. Then you put your family in best order that you know how to do, and then you put your local community in the best order you know how to do, and then, but there is the need to still explore, and we do have a frontier, and the frontier is one in time. It's not one in space, and we are on the vanguard of that. I keep thinking to myself, like, maybe our analogies of the present moment are wrong. Like we always go back to the end of the World War II consensus, or we go to a potential new civil war or something like that. But we don't know. It could be 55 AD and we're Paul of Tarsus, and we don't know what's going to happen in 70 AD or the subsequent two Jewish rebellions. And we don't know. So it's like when I wrote down the question of what would it mean to win, okay, so I think the question beyond that, so let's say we don't know what it would mean to win, then there's a question beyond that, which is something like maybe what I mean by winning is like preserving the Union, like preserving the United States circa 1980, the way you describe. But then maybe the question beyond that is something like God's will be done. Like we are the right people in the right place at the right time, and we are on the frontier. And maybe in Petersonian terms, that every single thing we do matters, and everything single thing that we say matters, and maybe it matters even more now than it did a year ago, and even more than it did 5 years ago. Maybe now, yeah. Uh,
Well, yeah, I
And
mean, the
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to
No, no,
interrupt
no,
you.
no,
Sorry.
no. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing that came to mind as I was riffing on what does it mean to win that I emerged after I landed my answer was like well, real quick, this plays into that. The other side of the individualism coin is that um it's not an altogether bad thing, and I don't think there's any going back. Um, like I think individualism, and here I don't mean it uh, to give it a definition. I don't mean it in an entirely bad way, but what we know of as individualism, I think, emerged from Christianity. Um, I think without a doubt. Um, and it's not going away, and it's not all bad. And that, even something like the TLC, it's like, what would I rather have? Like unity with not even like-minded people, but just a union of spirit with people, no matter how far away they are, or some like surface level unity with my tribe, with my cousins who are posting like victory speeches about the bad news today. And so with that, um, and I think even when people talk of like a whole country became Christian, like in the Middle Ages, and there's some truth to that. But what really happened is individual hearts were transformed, and people were so connected that they saw it in someone else, and then sort of followed point. But it was a unity that that didn't disregard the fact that baptism is for individuals. Baptism is not for groups. It's not for whole countries. It's for individuals. Individuals are baptized. Um, and so with that, like the way forward, I mean, as cliche as it is like whatever is needed, like to be it, like to be all things for all men, to be a saint. And even I think Peterson had this instinct right of like the only thing that makes civilization go on is self-sacrifice. That's it. Is sacrifice, and then the Christian idea validated sacrifice to the point of even death, crucifixion, which is a radical idea because it means you can't lose. It means even if you are killed for your cause, if it's the righteous cause, if it's for Christ, I mean, if you lose your life for Christ, like you win, and the thing you're trying to help wins. Um, so like I like long term, I'm mega optimistic because God always gets his reward, and there are still saints who walk the earth. Um, a lot of them. I mean, compare our time to dark times of the world. Like, even if you just accept the scripture narratively and are hum ho on the historicity, the narrative is there's been several times throughout history where God's like, there's basically no one. But I guess this is good enough. So I'm going to select this, get rid of the rest, and renew and move on. But Christ started something that's been going on for 2,000 years where humans have been participating in that. And so anyway, I guess I'm giving a white pill of the way forward. I have no idea what it is, like what sort of solutions, but sainthood is very possible. It's a narrow road, um, but it's the only road. If you want to save civilization, you have to be willing to die for it. Um, yeah.
It's ironic. Yesterday, I do a Bible study with my church every Tuesday, and yesterday, like during the middle of the Bible study, during the middle of it, I decided I'm going to start an estuary the first Monday of October, first and third Monday at my church. And I'd already gotten permission from my pastor. He doesn't really know what he's getting into. And I'm a Roman Catholic. I think it's going to be the only estuary group that's actually meeting on Roman Catholic grounds that I know of. But I got permission from my pastor. And I've been planting a seed in his ear, about basically an outreach effort for a while. And he basically asked me, this was maybe a month or two ago, and he said, "So, what do you talk about? Like what?" And I think it was the Holy Spirit in the moment, but I said to him, "Personal loss." Or can you give me? He said, "Can you give me an example of what you talk about?" And I said, "Personal loss." And he said, "Oh yeah, yeah. People need to people need to talk about that. That's good. Um, and then yesterday during our Bible study, and this is before all this the latest, um, just people's stories bubbling up out of the Bible study. And because our reading is John for this week, it follows the Catholic calendar, and our reading, the gospel reading is John chapter 3, verses 13 to through 17, which is Jesus
I
saying,
I'm Anglican, so we're still on the same
yeah,
lectionary.
gotcha. Cool. Yeah, unless the Son of Man is raised up like Moses raised the snake on the pole. Um, yeah, and no greater love is there than yeah,
Yep.
or God sent his only beloved son into the world such that yeah, John 3:16. Yeah. I don't have John 3:16 memorized. That's kind of sad, but anyway.
You
But
really
coming
are
out of
Catholic.
that, yeah, yeah. But coming out of that discussion, that's funny. Coming out of that discussion, there's just so many personal things and people just so in need of connection and so in need of relationship with other people that I'm like, I gotta start this now. I gotta do it. And so I resolved in my mind to start it in October. And that was yesterday. So I find that somewhat ironic in the timing. And I was thinking to myself as you were talking about, I don't even know exactly what point it was, but I was thinking that we had all these stories in the time we grew up in, the stories of the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, um, that had either a lone hero or a band of heroes. And these were the stories that kind of made us and molded us and built us. And now we are actually faced with, I think, for lack of a better word, historical circumstances, or we'll be going into them. Um, and the truth is, the historical circumstances are always happening, whether it was COVID, whether it was 9/11, whether, all these things.
Mhm.
Um, but I just have this really deep sense that this fellowship that we're building is particularly important at this moment in time. Maybe that's just a personal thing for me, probably. Um, but that we need this in public too. We need it in public too because I was thinking about this analogy earlier in Discord. You might have heard it, but if we're all these individual boats kind of floating on the sea and a storm comes up and we found each other and we tie all these small boats together and suddenly we got a pretty hefty raft that's, successfully going up and down in the waves. And and then we see some other boats that are struggling, to what extent is our responsibility to say like, hey, you can come here. And then obviously we need to be able to discern the spirits of those boats. Are they pirates? Are they, and I don't mean the cool kind of pirates. I mean, you know, and but I think that is our job to be the beacons, to be the watchtowers, to be those that might be able to light the way for others to find us. Um,
Mhm.
because it's gonna get weirder. It's gonna get rougher. And so I think of the responsibility, and I also think of, maybe it's the romantic in me, right? The thinking of this band of brothers, or um, going back to those stories of the '90s or whatever movies we watched. But what it,
I don't
yeah.
think so. I
Mm.
don't think so. I in my zeal post Midwest where I had like a 3 or 4 parter response I was going to throw in, and number two was going to be was going to be friendship, because there was this thread for me personally through the whole conference, and I'll lay it out briefly. I was at a I was at a dinner, uh, and Elizabeth Oldfield toasted to male friendship. She said there's a distinct beauty to male friendship that's very unlike female female bonding. She said there's a distinct beauty to it. That stuck that stuck with me. And I think she referenced actually when you and someone else were at the Cubs game and McMo showed up. She referenced that moment, and um, and she there was just a beauty there, so she toasted to it. And then in our estuary group at the conference, uh, very bright young woman who's gonna her and her boyfriend are gonna start an estuary in Silicon Valley. Um, like she was way too bright to be asking a question like this, but she was wise enough to ask it. She says, "What is friendship? What is it for?" Um, and we talked about that for a while, and a lot of our conclusions were like, um, because the passage you just shared that Christ says, it always blew my mind because I kind of had this like small L liberal or egalitarian approach to like a very fairness. Yeah, egalitarian, I guess would have sufficed. Like, love everyone equally. Um, don't pick favorites, stuff like that, which is good, especially if you've ever been around people who do that um, in a bad way. But man, like Christ didn't fully play that game. He
We don't
he
like to
had
admit it. He had favorites. That's right.
and he said the greater love has none than this to lay down one's life for one's friends.
Yeah.
And and obviously scripture's chocked full of this tension, right? Like forgive them for they know not what they do, love your enemies, pray for them. But the greatest love is to lay down your life for your friends. For your friends, right? Those you've chosen. Not your family, not your enemy, not your country, your friends. And and then even throughout the conference, and there's something to friendship and civilization that are like this to me. Um, because if civilization requires sacrifice, and the greatest sacrifice is to lay it down for your friends, um, and even in that little nugget I just shared, may be the way forward for like a post, like hyper connected world. But and then Vervaeke was asked the question like, is there a meaning crisis, or do people just not have friends? And he was upset and validly upset because he said the meaning crisis means people can't make friends, which is why we're here, Neal, because our world is such that the bonds and the connections that are here were not available elsewhere. Um, and also, there's probably something special about it too. I'm not trying to denigrate that, but yeah, I think there is something real, and I refuse. I just I refuse to believe there's not. I almost feel like Puddleglum, like as the hype fades, as that instinct that I had fades, because it wasn't just nostalgia, it wasn't just a feeling, and the Witch of the Underworld is like, come on, it's not real. I'm like, it's almost like I don't care if it's not real. I believe in it. It's a better world. I believe in the world where this is something and it means something and it matters. Um, like the friendship of TLC and something that is like it's mostly a brotherhood, but like it's not purely a brotherhood. Like, we have our beloved sisters and mothers around here. Um, but I guess that's enough of a comment from me.
Well, I think this feeds very well into what you originally wanted to talk about. And I think we could pivot towards that. What is the future of masculinity? What is proper masculinity at this time, at this place? Like, what does it mean to be a good man in our situation,
Yeah.
in this remarkable set of events? Do you want to introduce it anymore or talk? And I'm gonna, if you give me, well, I can still hear you because of these, but I'm gonna hit the air conditioning because it's warm in here. But if you want to talk for a bit, and I'll be back in 10
Okay.
seconds.
I will. So yeah, that the masculinity topic for me is my own quest to find an answer that's not. So it's like there's the default um, radical egalitarianism of our world, which I think is false. I think we've been living. I think post World War II, the co-ed American Western workforce is an illusion. That's what I think. I'm not a trad bro who's like all women should be in the home, like 1950s shit. Like I think that fell apart for a reason. I think I think it's been taken advantage of by employers for cheap labor. I think it's not been good for like the American like for children. Grim, I'm kind of with Grim Grizz on a lot of his critiques. But all that said, even though I think a lot of it has been an illusion, um, I also don't think it's good for women because I think it's like some of the best, like the best dentist I've ever had is this woman who had her own dentistry, and it was like sort of like holistic slash dentist. And man, she was the best I've ever had. She was not playing the industry game, um, but a world where she can do that and have children and then not be too far down to where she has to climb a ladder to get back up. So what I'm trying to say, I agree with some of the impulses, but I do not agree with any of the proposed solutions, and they're not trad at all. In fact, they're probably radically not. But as we're in that world, as you're in that world as a man, and you're either going to do kind of where there's no reason for you, for the core parts of you, and that's probably for men and women, unfortunately. But like, I could provide for my family, but they'll be okay. Like, if for whatever reason, God forbid, my wife decided to bounce tomorrow and had no income, or that's not as much, she'd be all right. Um, like the police force is going to do most of the protecting, right? I think um, it's not going to be the men of the village. And so that can lead to a bitterness, and this is where like the manosphere critiques come in, and plenty of them are valid. And someone like Aaron Wren has laid this out. He's no alpha male guy, but he's just like they had a point. It emerged for a reason. So as I myself was wrestling with the tension of like living in this like illusory egalitarian world, um, where but also not thinking bitterness and alpha male shit is the answer. It's like I have this intense optimism that like for the first time, like uh men men have an opportunity to like be men and not have it not have the society demand the respect. Like there's like a built-in a man who's a halfway decent man must be respected. Like it was just built in, and there's healthy elements to that. There's unhealthy elements, but like Christ, who can come and be perfect and not have people appreciate it or recognize it. By the end, everyone's gone. And I mean, this is where my favorite prose of all time comes in, which is the last paragraph of Chesterton's Orthodoxy, where basically, if I can paraphrase, he says there's one thing that Christ was hiding his whole life. Um, and he says, joy is the pagans are expressive with their joy, but it's not real. And but Christ concealed his, and basically he said the thing he was hiding his whole life was like a smirk, was his mirth. Um, and I think he's right because he was like he was in on the joke, he was in on the trick, and there's like a dark humor there, obviously, with the crucifixion. But I don't know. I don't know if this is making sense, but it's like the way forward, like rejoice, like rejoice. If if the masculine elements of society are being suppressed, um, like rejoice, um, because there's such an opportunity for it. Like if the way becomes narrow, there's such an opportunity for it to emerge in such a fantastic way. Like on a practical level, like if you're a man and your wife and your children don't like you're doing your best, you're doing great, and your wife and your children don't respect you or they're not following you. You can't force them to follow you, and you're wise enough to know that can't happen. Like blessed are you, you know. There's like a distinct beatitudes for dudes, and I don't know if this is making sense, but it's like I call it like the rise of the shadow patriarchy. You know, like as the strong man reemerges, and we all have friends who are like still with their mom, or they're just like that archetypal like dude who's just not there. Like his manhood is gone. If you're not the alpha or not that guy, if there's like this rise of the quiet, like this, and I say Saint Joseph is like the patron saint of this, right? Because he's like a background figure, you know. Um, but yeah, that's that's the image I have. The rise of men who are going to lead and be the authority, but whether or not that's recognized, they don't care. That's not their job. And yeah, I don't know. That's probably enough for you because it's
Dude,
all it's all it's all vibes.
that's like six excellent strands. Six that I could pick up on. Yeah, where to start? I I love the idea of Jesus with a smirk, with some mirth. I love that.
Yeah.
An image
Let
I've
me,
had in my, yo, go
you
ahead.
know, it's such a powerful quote. If I can just pull it up here.
Sure, sure.
So let me fill in the fill in the gaps with sound so there's not a giant digital blank space for people who are uncomfortable with that. But here we go. Last paragraph of Chesterton's Orthodoxy, which I think is it's my Christian apologetic because it doesn't play the modernist games. He's just spitting wisdom. He says, "Joy, which was the small publicity of the pagan, is the gigantic secret of the Christian. And as I close this chaotic volume, I open again the strange, small book from which all Christianity came, and I am again haunted by a kind of confirmation. The tremendous figure which fills the Gospels towers in this respect, as in every other, above all the thinkers who ever thought themselves tall. His pathos was natural, almost casual. The Stoics, ancient and modern, were proud of concealing their tears. He never concealed his tears. He showed them plainly on his open face at any daily sight, such as the far sight of his native city. Yet he concealed something. Solemn supermen and imperial diplomatists are proud of restraining their anger. He never restrained his anger. He flung furniture down the front steps of the temple and asked men how they expected to escape the damnation of hell. Yet he restrained something. I say it with reverence. There was in that shattering personality a thread that must be called shyness. There was something that he hid from all men when he went up on a mountain to pray. There was something that he covered constantly by abrupt silence or impetuous isolation. There was one thing that was too great for God to show us when he walked upon our earth, and I have sometimes fancied that it was his mirth."
So an image that I've contemplated. Mary Magdalene, after the resurrection, she thinks he's the gardener. So he's just resurrected. He knows he doesn't have a tremendous amount of time left on earth. It is finished, but he wants to enjoy what he created in the beginning. And he's just sitting there moving some plants around, hands in the dirt. He's got a wide brim hat, very Gandalf of him.
Or
He's
Tom
just
Bombadil.
Tom, exactly. Yeah, he's just messing around in the garden, and like looks over at Mary, and she's like, what happened to the body?" And he's, "Haven't you heard?" That like that's some mirth right there. Um,
And
uh,
again, historically, like just look at the historical timeline. The
Mm.
temple's about to be destroyed,
Yeah.
right? Small, the lifetime of the people who were thinking he's the gardener, and
Mhm.
then their ancestors. Rome was gonna like utter chaos,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's going to be hell on
that,
earth.
that that's the secret joy of the Christian is
Mhm.
like somehow
We're going to
the
win.
worst, yeah, the worst shit can happen, you know. And also, like God's still gonna take care of you. It might, it's not gonna be perfect, but it will not be. It will not be fatalistic. It will not be random
Yeah.
because even Christ dying on the cross, it was prophesied that his bones didn't break because the Romans didn't break them. They didn't break because God was going to decide how that shit went down. Like not man. That's why the theories of like man just took out their violence on Christ, like a pure Gerardian take, I don't fully buy
No,
because
because God's
because
100% in control every
yes,
step of the way.
yes. And how to make sense of that with the worst stories of human history, I don't know. But but
Yeah.
I refuse to not believe that.
Yeah. I'm with you wholeheartedly on that. It's grace first. And I cannot honestly tell you how I know that, but I know that. And I know it through a sufficient amount of evidence in my own life, in the most random, obscure ways I can. When you're confronted with a series of evidence that makes sense only to you and is deeply personal, but then, and if when you lean into that evidence, when you deeply begin to trust that evidence that presents itself in your own life, and then over time you are met with astounding positive feedback from everything and everyone you run into. That's the secret joy. It's like, I have this, I know, like I have this that I know, and I want to share it, but it's still a secret because I can't fully share it.
You can't explain it.
I
There's no
can't explain
explaining.
it.
If
Correct.
you know, you know, but if you don't know, you don't know.
I hate that expression, but yes,
Yeah.
we have these giant billboards in New Orleans with our New Orleans like world famous injury attorney, and it just has his face, and it's IYKYK on his face, and that's it. It's like the end of the meme era, man. Injury
Yeah.
attorneys with no phone number, no contact information.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. Anyway, that's another subject. Sorry to derail us. Um, Rejoice always. The rise of the shadow patriarch. I'm starting to teach high school students, Catholic high school students, about the Bible on Saturday. Um, my my wife's aunt asked me a few months ago. In fact, she talked to me about it for the last couple of years, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Sounds annoying. And then this summer, she's like, No, Neal, we need you. And I'm like, she knows I've been doing this Bible study for like 7 years now, and she's like, We need you. And I'm like, reluctantly, I'm like, all right, I'll do it. It's only 45 minutes every Saturday. Some Saturdays I have off, or and thinking about it, it's like, how do I even begin to teach the Bible to? And it's even worse than that because I get one grade every week. So I only see every grade like once a month. And then obviously for like major holidays and stuff, I don't see them. So I really have like 6 to 7 classes of 45 minutes for the whole year to teach the Bible. Impossible task. But
Yeah.
I am more excited, and I haven't been this excited about like something in my day-to-day life in like quite some time. I'm more excited about this than I am about estuary, which is weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
And it's something to do with like because I hear from the other like catechism teachers that are like they're curious about the Bible. Like, they want to know. And that's the realization for me. It's like it's not actually about teaching the Bible. It's about aiming to instill a mindset. And the mindset is something like the greatest mystery ever told.
Hmm.
And if you seek, you will find. And there are answers, but
Yeah.
it's way deeper and it's way better and it's way more interesting than anything you can imagine. And it's something like that mindset that I am aiming to convey when I teach this class. And we'll see how it goes. I might fall on my face. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
That's cool. Yeah. Talk about shadow patriarchy right there. Like, yeah. Everyone wants like power and influence, but here you are
yeah,
handed the platform to teach these kids.
like all you need to do, Neil, is instill your faith in 50 high school students.
Yeah. Right.
Let's go.
Right.
Let's
Right.
do it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, go ahead and go with any of the threads you got. But I mean, I'm, there's just, there's something that has been lost, I think, has been flattened. And there's these cultural impulses that are like the thing that's fueling them is valid, but the answers aren't right. But I just, yeah, I see men becoming men because even when men were still men, like I know a lot of the boomer critique can be wrong, but most of my friends, either our dads were the same or their dads weren't around. And yeah, yeah, there, I don't want to derail too much, but the best language I have for it is it like a spell was cast and put on men in particular. And it has to do with Set. Um, it has to do with like our strange like no fault divorce and the custody stuff and all that, which was a disaster. And like football being on Sundays and consuming like 12 hours of your day, um, like all that in one. And so I think this stuff is so far upstream culturally. Like you can't just cast blame on these soy boys or Gen Z fascists or whatever. Like our issues are so far upstream. But in the midst of that is and this is why the Christian perspective it doesn't take it, it takes a 10,000 foot view, but to look at the good. And so it's like I'm not describing this like amazing thing that's going to emerge on a massive scale. I don't know, I doubt it, but in the middle of it is going to be a very good thing. This whole rise of the shadow patriarchy, I see it as an immense good because like to be such a man that is if your manhood is squelched and suppressed, like the joke's on them, you know.
Yeah, we always think about the classic masculine virtues are to provide and protect. Those are the classic ones, right? But there's a third one that's missing from those. And it's maybe even a fourth one. Maybe, but it's definitely to explore. We are pioneers. It's not women being pioneers, it's men. And to explore and be on the vanguard. And that pioneering also includes building. So it's not pure exploration, but it's exploration towards, I would say, a promised land or a higher purpose of some kind. And I keep having this mentality towards people that are lurkers in TLC, but it's like, it's better over here. If your life is perfect, if you've got everything in your life, local community, if everything's great, if you've got all the connections and friendships and everything you need to weather the storm ahead, more power to you. Beautiful. But like, I've got the friends that I want in TLC. I've already got that. I'm good. Now, is the fact that we're recording this and probably going to put it online like vanity on my part? Yeah, maybe. It's definitely a major temptation of mine. Like I'm pretty vain. But the truth of it is that This is the gospel. This is preaching the gospel. It is better over here. There are better things to care about. There's a real mission over here. We've got work to do. This is real. And when I say this, I mean the connection between Nick and I, but I also mean the broader network that we're part of. And it's the pioneers, it's the explorers, it's the builders, and it's the future. And the reason I know it's the future is because I don't know the limits of deconstruction in terms of institutional power and what's going to be deconstructed. But I think it's going to be very, very difficult for the same powers that have deconstructed Mammon or are in the process of deconstructing Mammon. It's going to be very, very difficult for those powers and principalities to exert the same level of influence over genuine masculine friendship. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying we are going to have cracks and people are going to fall away and it's going to be hard. It's and you
Yeah.
know politics are going to enter into the mix and all that shit. But that I do stand by that decision with that when I came out of the lurk, I went after individual people like favorites. Like I said, like these are the people that I had that right brain calling of certain people where I said like I want to get to know this person better. I really feel it with and thanks be to God, by the grace of God, every single time that I've done that with the people that I really leaned into, like it's been for good reason. And I can resonance or whatever. I can feel it after the fact. And so, again, this is my call out. If you're lurking, if you're just watching this video, like there are most likely these are your people. And if you're looking for camaraderie and fellowship, there are ways of doing that. So,
And
yeah.
and it's not clear yet how like I suspect it's not just a matter of a sort of digital bulwark. I don't know. I think for many people it's going to become real. Um, and I think you're right. I love what you said about friendship. Obviously, like it was a fellowship of the ring that was able to get it destroyed. And even at the end of Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, which was I think going to be like one of three, the first of three, but it ends with like a group of young Russian boys after the village, like this poor kid in their village died. It was all sad, and Alexei or Alyosha is like their mentor, and I think they had all like made fun of him, like he was kind of bullied, but then he became this gathering point for the village boys, and that's how the novel ends with them pointing to them, and it's like their friendship is going to save Russia, which is going to somehow participate in saving the world. Which I know people love to dismiss Dostoevsky as that, but I have a hard time dismissing his his uh, his Russian destiny takes because he was not an idiot. Um, and who the hell knows? And that's not a comment on the war, by the way. It's just I can't dismiss anything that guy says. And even Fulton, even Fulton Sheen, in his introduction to the life of Christ, right, an American like Catholic, an American saint, truly. Um, said in his introduction to the life of Christ, uh, it remains to be seen, or he says, the West or America has Christ without the cross, and Russia has the cross without Christ, and it remains to be seen who will have both first, and we suspect it will be Russia. Yeah, pretty wild shit. And this is a guy who's almost violently anti-communist, right? So this was not a pro-Soviet thing. And he loved America too. He was very pro-American. But I mean, but my point is, the last book Dostoevsky wrote, I mean, it ends with just the scene of these young boys, and it's like their unity, their friendship is going to save Russia, which is going to save the world. But um, yeah, there's something to that, man. It's like a group of men, a bond of men, and even like TLC is not a man only space, but even the women here are all almost all ladies who are like want to see their either their sons or they've had sons, and so they view us all through that lens. They understand that the only solution to bad men is good men. There is no solution to, and evil's real. I mean, this is where like evil's real and it does embody itself in the world, in people, and you should not be quick to point that out. But anyone who's been around a psychopath or a sociopath or a narcissist, I mean, knows like those fun, those fun like Christ is in, and he is in all. I'm not making a statement I'm not making, but some of the yeah, when you encounter evil in a person, you better have a category for it. But the only answer to that is good men. That's the only answer, and that doesn't mean women don't play a part. There are no good men without good women. I mean, that's just the way it is. And yeah, I loved what you said there, and I think
You
it's right. I refuse to not believe that this is not part of that. I refuse. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I refuse. I My chips are in.
you shared with me the absolutely brutal statistics of Gen Z men who voted for Trump and the Gen Z women who voted for Kamala and what they cared about. And specifically I would regard the Gen Z men caring about marriage. That's probably been fairly consistent across the generations of like 20-year-old men about is like the what 35% something like that. It was their top priority. It's probably
Well,
been fairly
it was
consistent.
actually having kids was
Oh,
higher and
having kids.
marriage was down. But
Oh, that's
all
right.
the
Yeah, it was
men's
having
priorities
kids.
were fairly even.
Yeah.
So even though it was further down, they were all kind of close anyway.
Yeah. But I would regard, if you look at boomer men in the 50s or not 50s, I guess 60s or 70s, I bet those priorities would be fairly similar. Wouldn't be surprised. Or even like men in the 1920s. Um, and I think what's really changed is the priorities of women. But I will specifically call it the optimism of women.
Mm-hmm.
And building on what you said about the necessity of good men, women need to be inspired. That's that's the fundamental problem.
And they have
Women
to
need,
know. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, women need to believe. They need to believe in their men, in the future, and that's not something that they can create ex nihilo. They can't just whisk that out of their souls to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they need us for inspiration, and it's
And to
go ahead. Mhm.
and to hold a space like real quick, I'll Rafe Kelly was interviewed by Paul Anleitner and shared this incredible story of his marriage breaking down and falling and coming back together.
Mhm.
And part of it for him was he he was not able to create space and hold all of the shit his wife had just wanted to pour out. And this is a theme, and dudes into marriages know this, and we forget also. We every time we forget, or at least I do. Once that happens, they're good. Like a lot of times. Once it happens and you're holding it, you're actually able to say like, I have it. I'm a space where this like that's what solves that issue, that insecurity for them.
And you're not trying to fix it for them. You're just holding it. You're just taking it on. You're just taking up the cross.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and it starts with a small group of men and it builds from there. And um, that's what a musical is. That's the whole idea of a musical is you have discordant parts and pieces and a breakdown and things that go terribly wrong. And at the end of the musical, you have the crescendo, the beautiful song, and everybody's dancing in harmony and melody. And Honestly, that's what women want. Women want the end of Titanic where everyone's lined up in harmony celebrating the wedding feast. That's what they
Hmm.
want. It's
Yes.
abundantly clear.
Yep.
And it's up to us to build it and to create it and
Yep.
to live that out. And I think it's the next step post Peter Pan Lost Boys. It's like, what do the Lost Boys now do post Captain Hook or separate from Captain Hook? I got a punk rock streak in me, and so I'd be lying if I said that there's not a smirking part of me that's like, yeah, I'll show you establishment. Watch what we're gonna build.
Yeah.
Watch what we're gonna do. Like I've got that
Yeah.
smirking part of me, you know? But I think it's also exactly what's needed, and it's now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I've realized in my own life is, yeah, there's this weird idea that like men need to have respect before they can do the right thing, but
Mhm.
actually it's once you let that go
Yes.
and you're a good man anyway, then it actually comes. So it's almost I guess what I'm laying
It's
out,
grace first.
I'm laying out like the way the pattern of Christ plays out specifically in masculinity. And in yeah, and yeah, God, even in the I'm even thinking of like, the interplay of the garden and Adam and Eve, and then in the new creation with the seed coming through Mary into the world, and but it then it's Christ who generates it for the rest of us. Um, that like once you let that go, like because the Christological pattern is like once you lose your life, you gain it. It's like once if you lose your desire for all of the things men want, you will gain it, and like the joke will be on them. And I don't mean that in a retributive way. I mean that in like
It's better over here. It's better. It's a
yeah,
better world in
yeah,
every respect.
yeah. Like if you find yourself in a like you look at all the TLC marriages and people with their wives at the conference and all this stuff, and it's like your wife just not on board, is not into any of the stuff. It's like, dude, rejoice. Like that is where the actual stuff can go down secretly in your house. Not like you secretly convincing everyone to think a certain way, but just being a man is where the actual fruit can take hold. That is the playground. That is the landscape where all this stuff happens. Like, you know, like
Amen.
yeah, rejoice, you know?
For your
But
name
yeah,
is written. Yeah.
yeah, what you said though is good. That and even I mean I shared with you that very thoughtful response I had when I posted that, from a woman explaining like, yeah, this isn't surprising. Like, um, if women don't think there are good men out there, why would they want why would they want to get married? Why would they want to have children? Like men can't handle the shit that's going to happen or that's going on. There's like this and you've talked about this too. Like if in general the feminine does is able to grasp on a deep subconscious level, like shit that's about to go down. Um, and they respond. And I'm not saying there aren't like propagandistic forces that are playing into all this stuff too, like convincing women to like that their career should be number one. That's for sure a thing. But there's something deep in the heart of a woman that if she is presented with a real man, it's hard to say no. Um,
And I still believe in the Christian story of personal transformation, personal realization, personal encounter with Jesus Christ,
yes.
and reaching that point in the prodigal son's journey or the prodigal daughter's journey, being like, I'm here, like I've ended up here, whether it's OnlyFans or whatever,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
being like, hey, it was better when I was a kid or whatever on the farm or and yeah, I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I know that what we can do is we can build the better and we can provide the new arena where relationality and yeah, proper friendships, proper ability to relate to other people and have the mirth, have the joy can be instilled again. But it has to come down to a level that people are known and can be known and can wrap their arms around other people and actually tangibly impact the problem and the solution. And I have faith in people and I have faith in Americans that they'll reach that conclusion. We might be a little bit ahead of the curve, but I really do have faith in their capacity to extract themselves out of the trap,
yeah,
the traps that are besetting us. And it's really
yeah.
a call to repentance. It's a collective call to repentance. I once had this idea, and we could wrap this up because I know it's getting late, but I'll throw this out there. It's Hezekiah cleaning out the temple. There's this period of history where all these kings of Israel are just messing up after they're worshiping the Baals and the idols and the Asherahs, or I don't know how to pronounce that stuff. But Hezekiah does this whole long string of like, first you clean out all the stuff out of the temple, and then you sacrifice 100 bulls or whatever, and then you do this for the temple, like a consecration, and then it's like 1,000 bulls, and then it's like all this step-by-step repentance where the whole society, like everyone's invited to repent, like everyone, and they're all gathered in front of the table, and they have huge sacrifice, and it's like we're collectively giving up our bullshit altogether. And I still believe in that. Um, you know,
Yeah.
and the number one bullshit that we all got to give up, and I've been through it. But it's our resentment. It's the resentment that we really enjoy nursing because secretly deep down we know we're right.
Mhm.
It's that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, especially if Christ is our model. He was right. And how many people have been ignoring him forever and he's not resentful at all. Um, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's like once I get to the very bottom of my pessimism, I find this bright light of optimism that doesn't ignore all the shit of how I got there. It's like within it. Yeah, it's yeah, I'm very deep down I'm very optimistic. Yeah. But yeah, the theme that emerged here of like masculinity and brotherhood and like fellowship of the ring. Yeah, I that was it was crazy that was that was like my second top takeaway from Midwestuary is like I because I think often also about like at the end of most of the Pauline letters, him saying like greet each other with a holy kiss. That's in sacred scripture. Um, that's not something to be dismissed of like culturally it's like no 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 no. But post Midwestuary, it wasn't. That's the thing. It wasn't fake at Midwestuary. I had more of a sense of intimacy with my friends who I hadn't even met yet. I kept using that phrase when I was talking to dudes afterwards, like, well, now that we've been chest to chest, it's different. But it's true. I mean, that's probably maybe as close as we can get as like Americans, not kissing, but chest to chest. But I'm like that wasn't just fake, that wasn't just like, oh, finally, like these guys who have been all enjoying the same stuff, it was something real, something genuine. And I don't know what to make of that. That's what I was externally processing with some of the guys on Christian Baxter's uh, stream that we did shortly after. But I kept trying to point to something that was real, that I couldn't believe it was real. Um, and it's not all happy emotions. I had mostly negative emotions after the conference. But then once I got to the bottom of it, was like, no, that was real. There's something going on here. I don't know what it is. It's something.
Yeah, I think the heaviness is just the realization of the moment or the reality of it, you know. Because it took me probably a good 48 hours, 3 days once I got back to really get back in the swing of things. But yeah,
And I've been a different person. Um, Specifically at my job. Like I was pretty miserable and pretty resentful. Um, I couldn't even point at what, and wanting to do something else, but not wanting to anyway. And now I'm just like, I'm at where I'm at, man. Like I have a lot to be thankful for. And I've been a much different employee. I've been probably just as distracted. Like I know I'm on my phone more than the other two dudes, and I know they know that. Um, but my attitude has been just way better. Um, I've been a different person at work, and there's something to that.
that's not nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. So you want to end it? I think this was awesome. This went way better
yeah.
than I was afraid it would. So,
Oh, yeah. I wasn't worried. Um, but yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's good.
I think of you as a friend, Nick, as a brother, and I'm excited for the future. As I mean, that's crazy to say, but I am.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Me too.
yeah. Amen. All right, hang out.